Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Collingwood Connection, episode 6. I'm Will, as always, and Collingwood versus Adelaide review episode. It's not going to be as pleasant as last week, but I'll welcome first Fossil down there in Patterson Lakes. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, William. Yeah, no, it was a bit disappointing, William, but they've just got to regroup now, and I think with the bye coming up at the right time, and then we might get a couple of players back maybe, and they might have a look at a few of the younger ones. So hopefully they can learn from their mistakes. But yeah, it was a bit disappointing, but that's football, so they just got to regroup and have a good one next week.
Well, you can't win every week, but it'll be a bit more criticism this week for our beloved Pies. Going down, of course, so the Crows win by 14 points in the end. Collingwood 11-13, 79. The Adelaide Crows 13-15, 93. Let's start off with your first thoughts, Fossil.
Yeah, no, very disappointing, William. Yeah, they didn't use the ball as normally as well as they do in their forward line structure. They're really got to have a look at that next week. Like when you get the big blokes, they just seem to be caught out of position, William, and they weren't putting enough pressure on their backs because when they were marking the ball, I think they were too far up the ground. And it sort of threw us out a little bit, like there was a spread of goals. I think we had four that kicked two, but the big fellas, we've got to get that structure set up forward, I think, if we're going to be any chance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, we'll run through that. I'll start off with our quarter by quarter breakdown. I have the privilege of that lovely first quarter. Hot start to the game. It was full of a lot of pressure and mistakes from both teams for the first 15 minutes or so. The Crows got off to a good start. I think they misjudged the width of the MCG at times. There was a few out on the fulls happening in that first quarter, Fossil, but I don't know how Isaac Cumming, he had a paddock of space and also another teammate behind him waiting for that first kick inside 50. It just seemed a bit too easy at times. And Collingwood were very messy going forward. Gee whiz, we could use another tall target there, Fossil. They were really struggling just to get any sort of Collingwood connection, that is, going forward. But we tightened up our defence though. So the last 15, 10 minutes of the first quarter, both defences tightened up, and Collingwood got on top in terms of the territory. It was 15-14 inside 50, so broke even basically there. But we lost the centre clearances 4-0. So and as the story of the night went, we really struggled there in the middle and only managed that solitary behind. I think it was Lipinski who kicked it, and Adelaide 2-3-15 took a 14-point lead into quarter time.
Yeah, yeah, no, it was a disappointing first quarter, William. But then again, in the second quarter, we kicked I think 4-7-31 to 3-2-20. But my biggest problem is, William, out of the four goals, they were all sort of through general play. We got the overlap going a little bit, and I'm just worried like we're just not taking the marks inside 50s. And we did that was worst. I think that we've used the ball. Like I think McStay had 5 marks, but. Buller only had one and Memory only had one, and they were just too far up the ground. And it just throws your structure out. When we had good centre half forwards, full forwards, your full forward would stay at home. You had a target. Normally your centre half forwards are a bit more mobile. A lot of blokes used to criticise Big Coxie, but at least he brought the ball to the ground, and he gave the little ones a chance. Where I thought that's where we missed out badly, and our kicking, I think intercepts, they absolutely killed us. I think they kicked 10 goals, 11 or something from intercept marks, and normally we don't turn the ball over that bad, but that's just the way it was. And then plus a lot of the players, like Houston, the two Dacos boys, Cripps and Conara all battled their hearts out, but there was too many guys drifting in and out the game, and I think that sort of threw them out a bit. But yeah, no, our kicking to position wasn't very good at all. We missed a lot of targets. And like I said, they scored 11, 10, 76 from intercept marks or spoils, which is not a good thing. We just turn the ball over too easy, and then it puts a lot of pressure on your back line. They got the overlap going, and I thought, like you said in the centre clearances, I thought that's where we beat them pretty well last year. But we've just got to get more pace in there, I think, and but that's something that I'm sure McRae will look at over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it wasn't good at all. It wasn't a good look. But in that quarter we kicked 4-7-31 to 3-2-20. But it was a bit better than the first quarter. But the back line I thought was doing okay, with their three big talls and everything. But, up the other end of the ground, you got to kick the goals to win the games. And I think that's where we fell down really badly. So at half time, like we were still in the game. But, yeah, it was a lot better than the first quarter. But, I think they'd be disappointed with their work on the field and their field kicking. So, anyhow, that's the way I saw it, Will. So I think next week they've got to get some pace into that middle of the ground.
Yeah, no, definitely. Might be worth giving the couple. Well, I think the midfield was just killed all night. Fossil straight from the center, and just a quick comment with that end of that second quarter. Braden Maynard, the stand-in captain, just had a brain fade. Tried to attack the middle of the corridor in the last minute. We fought really hard to get that three-point advantage, and that goal late to I think it was Fogarty who got on the end of it. That's just just takes away your confidence, and that would have boosted up the Crows, and that obviously transpired into the third quarter where they really took over. So yeah, the Crows by three at half time, and then I call that third quarter, the Premiership quarter, was an absolute horror show. And I try not to be extra critical of players. I know this is only the second game for the year, but I just have to say this fossil about our boy McStay. I've protected him a lot against criticism from other supporters countless times. He obviously hasn't been performing as that forward that we'd hoped. He's had his moments. 2023 prelim final, he obviously helped us get the job done, even though he missed the premiership the next week. But in this game, let alone your 200th game, it's on him to take responsibility as a forward. And his first shot for the night was out on the full. It was on the boundary line, but his next two opportunities I was most disappointed with. He should have taken the shot. He tries to pass the ball off, just give that responsibility to somebody else, and it cost us pretty dearly because we missed out on opportunities to kick goals ourselves, which we were struggling at the time. And that second one he did, it went straight over our heads down. Adelaide kicked a goal, and then from then they just absolutely caught fire. So I can't just blame that purely on McStay, but I'll be very surprised if there's not a few magnets being moved by McRae and the staff, because it's just he's completely out of confidence. And all the three key forwards, Buller and Membry and McStay, they just the first two rounds have been absolute shockers, and I think most other teams would definitely swing the axe. So I'd just like to see something change up, and maybe if we are short down back, that's where he can go. He's no Rory Lobb, but he just needs to do something because he's got to switch on, or else Charlie West and Howes they need to start having a crack from round three, because it's I think it's just too much for the Collingwood supporters to bear at the moment. We don't have a marking target, and they just can't seem to get anything going. A good play there in the third quarter. Ed Allen, he took the game on. It was good to see. I'd like to see more of it from him, but that led to a nice goal from Steele. The centre clearances, though, like we've spoken about, they're just becoming a joke. It was 11-3, 7 minutes into the third quarter. Pendles, Dacos, Long, all being shown up in the middle by, well, like you said, not Dawson, but the lesser lights of Adelaide. They were just credit to them. Berry and Saligo, they absolutely killed us there. And we even threw Jamie Allard in because he wasn't getting any opportunities up forward, but we just started experimenting because we just weren't getting the job done in there. So pretty disappointing. 4 minutes left in that third quarter. Schultz kicked a nice crossing goal, but I just want to highlight that Sidebottom had the ball about 60 meters out, and there was absolutely no movement in the forward line. There wasn't any leads. Everyone's just looking around at their teammates to do something, and then inevitably the high kick comes in. So, we're extremely lucky that Schultz could get on the end of it. And I know that there's a lot of talk about the umpires. They didn't have any bearing on this game in my eyes. I know that we had a bit of momentum going, but they did have a shocking couple of minutes towards the end of that third quarter where the Collingwood crowd were rightfully upset. The thing that gets me is not so much the 50-meter penalty being awarded, but there was a few opportunities in the third and fourth quarter. They didn't call it Collingwood's way, and so consistency is all you really need. It's Lockie Schultz also got his arm chopped right in front of the umpire, and no calls. So sometimes it doesn't go your way, but they had a couple of bad minutes there. Still a terrible quarter overall by the Pies. 2-2-14 to Adelaide's 6-5-41. That put them out to probably a game-winning lead of 30 points going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, I think you summed that up well. Yeah, yes, William. When they played all over us, and like you said, it is a premiership quarter. But when you only kick, two goals, 3 2/4 of footy, and you're trying to win a game, it makes it fairly hard. But to their credit, they had a crack in the fourth quarter, and they kicked 5 goals, 33 to 2, 5-17. But yeah, it was disappointing, and like you said, I think you've hit the nail on the head with the three big guys. I don't know what they're going to do there, William. And like you said, they're putting Adelaide in there. They're throwing people out of positions and stuff like that, and they're probably not used to playing a lot of football in the middle. But there's a few quiet, but I just thought that, Houston, the Dacos boys and that, they had a crack. And like our backline's been the one that's been getting criticised all the time. But I think when you keep two sides under 100 points, I think they've done their job. We just got to get that border centre or in the centre line and then the forward line set up properly, get it in there quickly. Like you said, they're not normally stagnant. Normally they get the ball, just outside the 50 and there's three or four leads and they seem to have plenty of targets. But like you said, well, when they're all just standing there, it makes it hard, and it's only really luck if it does fall into somebody's hands. They need to spread out a bit and make it stay the target. And you have grummers at the front, grummers at the back. But when you just stand there, it looks awful. With them. It looks absolutely awful. Like when they overlap and get the ball in quickly, we look really good. They get good shots at goal, and that not getting pushed to the boundary line all the time. And yeah, it was just completely out of character. But like you said, they've got to just do something with that forward line. But at least they came back in the last quarter. But you can't have 2 quarters and kick 2 goals, three, and expect to win a game of footy. So, but I think the back line did okay. So, but like you said, we got smashed in the midfield. Not so much by Dawson, but the other players. And, maybe we've got to look at a bit more leg speed in there, Will, like Josh Zakos or somebody like that, play more there and get McQuarrie in there, the quicker leg boys to try and get it out of the centre. And if you can get it down quickly, it makes it so much easier for the forwards. And I think that's where we sort of fell apart a bit. Only a couple of times when we overlapped in the second quarters, it's like we looked okay, but most of the time they looked very stagnant. And, I thought with one run under the game, the first game under their belt, most of the sides were all right the second week, but we were the opposite, unfortunately. And, it was very disappointing. Very disappointing effort.
Yeah, well, obviously not getting the result and 14 points in the end. McRae spoke after the game in his press conference and said, we there's a blue skies. There is. It wasn't all doom and gloom, but you can't just play patchy football and expect to get the result. So credit to Adelaide though, they were simply the better team and their structures held up against ours. So well done to them. Positives out of the game. Let's try and find a few there. Fossil. The fight of this team, like you just mentioned in that fourth quarter, under McRae, they never give up. We were 37 points down, 18 minutes into the third, so we got back within 2 goals with plenty of time to play, and obviously that 50 meters that to Tex Walker it didn't help. I just think they need a slight adjustment with that rule, so I'm not going to be overly critical, but I think if the players choose to get outside five, I don't know why, they're saying, oh, someone has to stand the mark. They want to make this into complete free flowing football. But there's so many occasions in the game where a player's line ball where he should be standing the mark and then the umpires let him run out of the way. So I think that that's just got to be tweaked by the AFL. I don't want to see, X amount of 50 meters in a game, especially it was critical. I'm not going to say it would cost us the game, but it was a very critical time. We were back within 2 goals and Adelaide were under the pump. So they go down, score a goal, and essentially it's just too much for us to get back. So, yeah, credit to the Crows though. They did hold on, and a positive out of a negative. Into our back six for the game, as you touched on, Fossil. They had 55 inside 50s to the Crows, but we got smashed in the centre clearances 16-9. So the pressure that back six absorbed, and obviously we're out of our depth in terms of height, but and no Darcy Moore, no Jeremy Howe, so they did very well to stand up, and we don't want to concede as much as we are. Still, 13 goals is not it's not too bad, but they had a lot of shots at goal, and they could have been up by a bit more, the Crows. So hopefully they can get a couple of players back and really get our structures right down there. But no credit to them for really standing up under the pump so much.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. Well, because the ball keeps getting pumped in all the time. They don't get a rest, so they've got to be switched on. And I thought they did really, really well. But I think the shining point is Houston's first 2 games. William, I think they'd be fairly happy with him. I was very, he's got a bit of confidence. And like you said, the second year, Schultz was the same the first year, even going back earlier, seen the struggle, but now he seems to know the structure, probably knows the players better too. And, but he seems to be in a very happy place and he's playing really good football. So he's a good shining light. I think it's good to see him. His first two games have been excellent.
Yep. The negatives fossil, that's you this week.
Well, and the negatives we have, unfortunately, McStay, Buller, and Memory. I don't know what the hell they're going to do, but they're going to find something next week, like you said. I don't know. Do the twos play before we play our next game? I think they do, don't they? The
Well,
the
they've had a
VFL side,
they've had
yeah,
a practice
yeah,
match, but that round one should be back by then.
yeah, yeah. So maybe they have a look at a few of the younger ones like Howes and West, and even Cochrane or Steen, and then Printable and blokes like that, depending how they play. We might get a bit more speed in there. You can't make wholesale changes, but they're the sort of guys, if they're going to be good enough and they want a game, well, they've got to perform in the VFL, so they keep knocking on the door, then put pressure on these guys that are sort of struggling a bit, and if they've got to be dropped, well, they've got to be dropped, they just can't keep playing them because on name, they're all been champions, but if they're not in form, see you later. Back to the twos and give the young guys a chance.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Yeah, unfortunately, a few negatives out of that one, but we move forward. There are only two games into the season, so I think after thinking about it for a bit, we can take a breath. We have the week off, so yeah, let's hope they can get some structure in, get some fresh players in, and get the job done. Obviously, a couple of weeks against the Giants down there at Marvel Stadium. So pat on the back this week. Player who I think needs some recognition is Jack Crisp, 25 disposals, 8 marks, and he got our first goal on the board in the second quarter. So, no, very solid game by Crispy. And I like him as a midfielder, more going half forward. He just, when he's running through the center of the ground, he just seems to break the lines fairly well and generally uses the ball well. So, Jack Crisp had one of his better games, the record holder for most consistent games for a reason. But yeah, no, he had a much better game this week, and I'd like to see him. He might be that answer. Throw him in the middle a bit more, Fossil. Just we'll have to tinker a bit with the back line, but Jack Crisp, I think, was very solid last
Yeah,
night.
well, they did that. Yeah, you're spot on. Well, they did that last year. Well, they played him. He wasn't on the ball a lot, and then I think about halfway through the year last year, he went into the middle, and like you said, he gives them good drive. He's a good long kick, and like you said, they don't have to be there. They can just go there, do their job, and then have a spell. They've got to get the rotations going. But oh yeah, I thought he did very well, and it was the same last year. They put him in the middle, and he just gives them that bit of bite. Something different. Being a left footer. So, it was a
Your
good, but, he did very well. Rate me left
your
footer like
player,
Fossil.
your well, very good, Fobby. What's your player, Fossil? The
What's that?
pat on the back.
Houston,
Who are you patting?
Houston, Houston.
All right.
Very happy with him, William. After all the criticism he got, he would have been under the hammer because we have got a big army of supporters, and he would have been hearing it too, and on social media and all this sort of stuff, and blokes getting stuck into him, all the footy shows and everything. And I think he's turned around and stuck it right up him, William. His first 2 weeks have been magnificent. I hope he continues the form.
Yeah, no, exactly. He's been very good. And that second year, it seems like they have a year under their belt and then they start to really connect with the players. So, no, well done to Dan, and that will reflect in our votes, Fossils. So, the Collingwood Connection CC Player of the Year votes. I'll just go through mine first. So, I had to give the one vote to Schultzy. He's our little pressure king and he does it week in, week out. Last year he was one of our best. Just keeps applying the pressure and also he's come up forward and been pretty dangerous the first 2 weeks. That's 4 goals in total now, so 2 goals last night, and I've given him the one vote. My 2 votes went to Nick Dacos, the man himself. It wasn't his best game. There are times where he wasn't that he was out of the game, but he just didn't seem to have that same sort of impact that he usually does. He still had the 32 touches, and does some freakish things that other players can't do, and hit some targets that other players don't even try to go for. So 2 votes to Nick himself, and 3 votes to your man Dan Houston. 32 touches at 78%, but more so that he was a cool head under the pump and his elite kicking skills, whether it's short kicks just to get us out of trouble or very long booming kicks down the line. And as the season goes, he might drift a bit more into the midfield and see if he can get within that 60 meters. We know he can thump the ball a long way. So, no, all credit to Dan. He's been very good so far the first two games this year. So, what about yourself, Foss?
Yeah, well, I was a little bit different. We only one different, but I thought Cripps' effort was really, really good. So I gave Cripps one. I thought he was really well. And like you said with Dacos, he covers that much territory well. And, to hit 33 possessions, like they mark him fairly hard, but he's just so good in a couple of goals. And then I gave three to Houston. So Houston three, Nick Dacos two, and Cripps one.
Oh, pretty much on the same page there, Foss. But so the season votes so far, we're only two games in, but we got our boy Nick Dacos on top with 10. Houston's got six, so obviously a very good performance last night. Pendlebury, Dacos, and Perryman with two, and Schulte and Chris round off the top. Well, they're in tied for fourth on 1 point each, so or one vote. So well done to those guys. Yeah, it was unfortunately not many winners last night, Foss, but anyway, a week off and
Uh,
time to regroup. So yeah,
yeah,
players on the chopping block. So bear in mind there is a bye week ahead. So any players you think particularly on the chopping block or some youngsters maybe who might need the rest?
yeah, maybe Alan, I think he might need a bit of a spell, and I think Buller too will, like get back into the twos and find some form, like they did that with West last year. He played a few games, so I think doesn't hurt them to go back, or like you said, they can stay down back. A lot of times they do that so they can get more of the pill and get their touch back. But depending on, I suppose, more and the matchups, but that's one thing they can do is swing with stay down back. But yeah, in memory, I don't know what they're going to do. Well, it just depends on, like I said in the VFL, if they put their hands up, they're going to give them a crack at some stage. So it'll be just interesting to see. But the matchups will have a lot to do with who'll come in and who won't. But we'll see what the young boys do in the VFL. But yeah, I think Allen and Buller's got to go back and get some touch with him, get his confidence back, and hopefully kick a few goals in the VFL and put his hand up and put pressure on the guys that are in there. So I think Buller and Allen at the moment probably.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And well, Buller they might persist with even one more game. He did kick one out in the full early, and it would do his world of confidence just to get a quick, nice grab and a goal earlier on in the game. So, and hasn't had many hit up leads. I know he's had his chances, but a nice lead up and go back and coolly slot it. It might just boost his confidence a bit. And Ed Allen, I did like his second half, but for some of these other midfielders or young fellas are knocking on the door, I think they're gonna look to pushing him out because he's had eight touches and one behind is not, it's not really the standards that we need at the moment. And he just needs to find that AFL pace, I reckon, Fossils. So
Yeah.
our big pre-game predictions that we had for the game, so we won't worry about the result. I said the Pies by 5, you said Collingwood by 17. So no good there. I said Pendle's the top with 32 disposals and he got 16. Josh Dacos all right. He had 28 and you said 29, so pretty close there, Foss. Dacos obviously led with 33. And with the goal kickers, it was a shared load this week. I had Elliott, and he had two with Dacos, Schultz, and Steele. You took three of them, McCreary to go in Elliott. So I'm gonna for next game against the Giants, Fossil, I'm gonna put you down to you can only pick one. I'm sorry, you can't just keep chucking
All right. No
multiple
worries at all.
multiple selections in the basket. So,
I know.
um,
I'll study the form with him. I'll study it really hard, and I'll get you one. Okay, against the Giants. All right.
sounds good. Hopefully a good response by the boys. Quick one. It's just come through today. Pendles has been offered a week Fossil for that bump. I don't know if you've been able to have a look at it yet, but do you reckon he gets off first suspension in 427 games?
Oh, I think his record's pretty good, Will. I think he's got nothing to worry about whatsoever.
There's
It
a
may
there's
be,
a
but they might give him a little fine. Well, he might have to put 1,000 in the kitty, but I think he'd be okay.
I
What
don't
about
think
yourself?
I don't think that'll hurt him. There's a good bloke policy apparently. Cameron up in Brizzy's used that, and a few other guys. So I think he's a pretty good bloke. And no, I looking at it, he was. It just seemed like a contest that happens each week in the AFL. So players bump into each other. Pendlebury's not one for malice, or he doesn't target players. He's got a pretty decent record to show that, even very minimal fines throughout his career. So. I think that the good bloke policy, let alone the actual incident itself, I don't see any trouble there. And I'll just finish off Fossil with, our last comment. So this one's for Craig McRae. Listened to the press conference and But previously states on many occasions that the coaching staff, want to reward players for their efforts. So for me, the spotlight's on selection next week against in a fortnight against the Giants. I understand it's horses for courses, but there's no reason that Steen shouldn't have played against the Crows. They had 8 tools in their lineup this week. The combined ruckman, McAndrew, and Murray, I think it is, had 2 games in total between them. So if Steen was to debut, the same as the other ruckman, and they broke even with Cameron in the end, and that probably hurt us because Cameron couldn't do his usual intercepting down back or go up forward for a rest. So I just think they've got to give him a chop out, and whether it is against the Giants, but I think the likes of Steen, Cochrane, West, Howes, and Smith, our tall guys, they all need some sort of exposure. They have to earn it, obviously, in the VFL, but we're never going to know. They have to give us an idea of what we're dealing with, and they might push the likes of McStay, Membry, Buller, even Frampton out of the lineup. If Cochrane was to come in and Darcy Moore found his place back, I mean, I love Billy, but if someone is performing and deserves to get a chance, then we have to see how we're looking, or we don't know where we're going to be in the next couple of years. So anyway, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I just think,
No, no, I agree with you, William, 100%. William, that's what they've got to do, mate. There's no point just hanging on to the same ones all the time. And like you said, if they're not performing, you put them back in the VFL and you give these young blokes a crack because next year we're going to lose probably 4 or 5 players, so it's better. I think, like it'd be nice if we could wait till halfway and then see how we're tracking. But at the moment, you got to start giving them a game, William. You just can't keep holding back, and just hoping that the guys that have served us magnificently, come up the next week. Because if they don't, like that loss there, that puts a bit of pressure on us because we're probably going to have to win a couple of games that we're probably not favourites to win. Maybe because the competition looks like it's fairly strong. So, and you got to be on your ball, and anybody can beat anybody. So, it would have been nice to be 2-0, but 1-1. We're back in the pack, but it's only early days. But no, I think you're right. They've got to give these young ones. They've got to start playing them, William. Like you said, if Steen had been in the ruck, Cameron could have gone back and helped out, or he could have gone forward, and taken a couple of marks, which he normally does, and it could have been all the difference between the winning and losing the game. You don't know, but oh yeah, I think they've really got to have a look at these young fellas and start giving them a crack.
yeah, exactly. And bear in mind too, we've usually been smashed after round zero or opening round, as they say, by the Giants, and then the team recovered pretty well. So we're not going to
Yeah,
throw the toys
exactly.
out of the basket this early in the season, and hopefully the week off came at the right time, and the players can adjust and get ourselves ready for the Giants down in Marvel. That'll be very intense game in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Will. Yeah, that's a win. They're going to win that one. Yeah, yeah. We don't want him 1 and 2. 2 and 1 will be okay.
All
We'll
right,
have to wait and see.
we'll see how we go, and thanks everyone for tuning in. When you do, let's sorry, some bother there. Also, just like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Next week, I have had a few more emails and that come through. We try and get back to your comments as well, so send them in, and we'll get them as part of our episode. Throw some questions maybe towards Fossil. He's a wiser man here. He's been around a few more years than myself, so any questions
Yeah,
previous to 1993, Fossil will be all over. So
I
send.
might tell them a couple of stories, Will, too, about Paddy Sexton. I might about the goal umpire, boundary umpires.
Uh,
I'd throw a couple of them in next week
Yeah,
and the
he's
boards.
talking about his old local footy days in Hamilton. So, all right, guys, until next time, go Pies, and we'll see you then.
Go, go Pies. Thanks, Will. Go
See you,
Pies.
mate. Bye.
Bye.